Hello Superset Maniacs and welcome back to my channel. In our previous video we tried to determine who was better between Dorian Yates, Jay Cutler and Phil Heath, comparing their 93, 2001 and 2011 versions respectively. If you guys want to check out that comparison, there's a link in the description. The final result was so tight that we need a second comparison to try to clarify things. In this second call out of this epic comparison, we're going to compare their other best shapes of all time. Dorian Yates 95, Jay Cutler 09 and Phil Heath 2013. For all three of them, these are later versions in their careers, all having more muscle maturity and more experience as Mr. Olympia competitors. So in a way, this comparison should be even better than the first one. So without further ado, let's get to the mandatories and we start with the front double biceps pose. Once again guys, keep in mind that regardless of any kind of scaling, this would never look as in reality, mainly because of the differences in camera angles from show to show. Back to the pose, let's face it, Dorian was never going to battle to win this pose, not even before the bicep tear, let alone after. So let's get this out of the way, Dorian is third in this pose. Between Jay and Phil, it depends what we prefer. Phil Heath obviously has the superior guns, however despite the larger waist, Jay Cutler flows better in this pose mainly because of his larger frame. Or rather he looks better than Phil because of Phil's narrowness, take your pick. Jay has great biceps as well, underrated I would say, and the best lower body. Overall, I'm giving this pose to Jay Cutler. Next pose is the front lat spread. This is usually a Dorian Yates pose, and even though this is not the best angle for him here, he still looks the best. His lats flare out the best, he looks the most proportioned and the most relaxed hitting the pose. Phil's lats look bigger than Jay's, but his narrow structure and dominant arms make him look bad in this pose. His weakest pose, by the way, probably his only weak pose in his prime. Jay Cutler takes second place here. Side chest pose, and Dorian Yates in 1995 looked the best in his entire career in this pose. Somehow he managed to look fuller, especially through the chest and shoulders. However, I don't believe he can rival the other two here. I know people say that in 95 Dorian beat even Kevin Levrone in this pose, but I don't buy it. And you had to be there argument doesn't work for me because as I wasn't there, I choose to judge the pictures, not what other people say. And as hard and grainy Dorian would look here, I really don't see how he could have beaten Kevin Levrone in the side chest. For me, Kevin Levrone is the best ever in the side chest pose, and in 95 he looked probably the best in his entire career, so I don't know. Back to this comparison, Dorian falls the last again, and between Jay and Phil, I don't know, Phil is so dominant through the arms and shoulders, but his chest looks kinda flat here in comparison to Jay's. However, I can't make Phil lose this pose as he looks to be beating Jay in any other aspect than the chest. He destroys Jay with the side leg as well, so overall I'm giving this pose to Phil Heath. Back double biceps, and this is between Dorian and Phil once again, as Jay could never hope to rival these two in the back shots. 95 Dorian Yates looks much better in this pose than in 93 in my opinion, because of the added mass. He is not as crisp as in 93 and compared to himself, better conditioning may be better, but compared with other bodybuilders, as long as he is still the most conditioned one, having more mass is definitely a great advantage. This is not the best execution from Phil Heath, he leans back way too much in this shot, so upper body I'm giving this one to Dorian Yates. It's true that Phil wins the arms, but Dorian's back makes the difference for me here. Downstairs Dorian is winning the calves and losing the glute ham department. I don't know if the judges would see this one as I do, but because of the size advantage and superior back, I'm giving this pose to Dorian Yates. Rear lat spread pose, and once again Jay is last. Jay has the size but lacks the details and balance the other two guys have here, so again this is between Dorian Yates and Phil Heath. As I told you in the previous comparison, judging the back poses between Dorian and Phil would always be tough. In this pose Dorian is wider, much wider indeed, but Phil doesn't look narrow in this pose, at least standing by himself. When compared to a wide guy like Dorian, it's true that Phil's narrowness becomes more obvious, but unlike for the front lat spread, where this is really an issue for Phil Heath, in the rear lat spread he manages to look much better. And not to mention the details he presents through the back. If they were standing side by side on a real stage, Dorian's width might have been too much for Phil, but as I'm seeing things here, Phil is more balanced upper body, lower body, and those 3D details make me lean more towards him in this pose. What do you guys think? Side triceps, and this was a sight to see in our previous video as I couldn't choose a winner in this pose, but here, by the looks of it, Dorian Yates looks to be having a weaker pose than in 93, and Phil looks to be having an even stronger pose than in 2011. It's still very tight though, this pose could still go to any of these three guys, they all look good in their own way. However, Phil is a little bit better than the other two, at least in my opinion, so Phil takes the point. Between Dorian and Jay, Dorian has a deeper cut horseshoe and a better execution, however Jay compensates with a greater core. I'm giving a second place to Dorian and third to Jay. Abs and thighs, and I'm giving last place to Phil Heath. Even though his waist was narrow in 2013, his abs already lost the details from previous years and combined with his bad taper make him last here. Actually none of them look very good in this pose. Jay is blocky and Dorian clearly loses the legs against both Jay and Phil. Dorian's waist was pretty wide in 95, so he doesn't have the advantage of having a way better taper than Jay. So because of Jay's deeper cut abs and way better quads, this pose goes to the 2009 Olympia champion. Most muscular, and all three of them look much better than in our previous comparison, even Dorian Yates despite his torn bicep. Actually, if it wasn't for the torn bicep, Dorian could have even beaten Jay maybe, because obviously Phil is winning the pose, no doubt. 2013 Phil Heath had the best most muscular pose of all time in my opinion. Jay Cutler takes second place here and Dorian Yates a respectable third. I'm very impressed with his most muscular in 1995. The final score looks like this. Dorian Yates and Jay Cutler tie for second place both with 17 points and Phil Heath decisively wins the comparison with 14 points. So judged by this comparison, Phil Heath is the better bodybuilder, but overall it was tight again between the three. This might not be the most efficient way to judge bodybuilding, awarding a first, second and third place for each pose and draw the line at the end. There are also the other two rounds, the symmetry and the posing, that we didn't judge here. Ultimately, this is just my opinion, so it doesn't have to mean anything in the end. Let me know in the comments below your opinion, guys. Who is the best bodybuilder out of these three? Like the video if you enjoyed it, regardless if you agree or not with the final result. After all, this is bodybuilding, it's about opinions and subjectivity mainly. Subscribe to the channel and as always, thank you guys and see you next time.